So now onto our program, I'm going to hand it off to the Carl's amazing shop manager, Eliza Brown, who will introduce Moon, and together they'll be talking about wishes later in the program. Hi, Eliza.
Hi, thanks, Courtney. Like Courtney said, I'm the manager of the Carl Bookshop, and I am so excited to welcome Mượn Thị Văn, author of this gorgeous new picture book, Wishes, which is illustrated by Victor Knight, from Scholastic. And from her New York Times acclaimed debut, In a Village by the Sea, which you haven't seen, is just another gorgeous book. Moon's books have received many distinctions, including a Northern California Book Award, a Golden Kite Award, a New York Public Library Best Book, a Kirkus Reviews Best Book, and an Irma Black Honor Award. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited. You will not believe how stunning this book is. Wishes is just so poignant. It's heartbreaking. It's beautiful. The text is poetic. The illustrations are just so evocative. Like you said, the story was so personal to you, based on your own experience. And I wonder what kind of inspired you to, or kind of what made you decide to write the book?
Yeah. Well, this book is the reason I became a writer of books. It's the story I wrote a little over 4 years ago. That's when I began writing it, but it's actually a story that's been in my heart for at least 25 years. But the actual event that triggered it was the announcement and execution of the Muslim travel ban. And this was a subject that I had approached in a previous book, but in an oblique way, which was in my second book called The Little Tree. So there's like a lengthy author's note at the end that talks about my family's voyage to the US. But that one, centered on talking trees, and it didn't quite have the impact that I hoped for. And I realized, 4 years ago that the reason is because it needs to feature humans. The story has to feature humans in order for readers to fully empathize and understand the story. So,
yeah. I thought it was really interesting, and you have such a sparse text. You use the inanimate objects that show that wishing, like the sea wishing it was calmer. I know it made me think of just how everyone wants to help, and it's just this wish of hope. But I wonder what made you kind of inspired to frame it that way, to kind of put that perspective on these objects instead of on the human child.
Yeah, I don't know if there was like a single moment of inspiration. I do know that even though it was something that I wanted to write about for a while, maybe it's just to allow me to have some distance. Even when I mentioned about the little tree, it featured talking trees. So here, even though it does feature humans, it still allows me to have a little bit of distance, which makes it a little easier to write about. It was difficult for me to write the author's note, and that was written from a first person perspective. So I think that was one reason. And I think the other reasons are some that you've deduced, and I think other readers have deduced, and just I guess I don't want to explain it too much, yeah. But I think when you read it, you understand it already. So
yeah, absolutely. And I thought that perspective switch too, really makes it so much more powerful and evocative at the end.
Yeah.
And I think it instills with anyone that, that wishing gives hope, that this is a hopeful book, even with all that, pain and sadness and grief associated with it. Just comes through really strong. I think you said that there was 75 words in this text, which is just so amazing that you get this incredible, so much information, so much emotion with just such sparse text. Was that difficult? Is the final version like similar to the first draft, or was there a lot of revision that went into writing it?
It was very similar. The final version and the first draft are very similar. There were some slight changes, but because it's only 75 words, slight changes can become key changes. And I too am surprised at how much emotional resonance it can carry with 75 words. And I know that when I finished the first draft, I just went to a school. I had a school visit yesterday, and one of the students asked me, "How did you feel after you wrote it?" And I had first I was surprised that the student asked that question, but I felt both relieved and glad. I was very happy that I was able to tell the story in a way that I thought was true to the story, and in a manner that that I was happy about. And but I was also sad, and I actually cried at the end of the first draft, like after I finished the first draft. So yeah, so even for me, it was, yeah. I guess the few number of words I hope will allow the reader to fill in the gaps and give them room to think and ponder.
I think that when having that kind of tears and that relief afterwards is just kind of evidence that it was really a job well done, that you really got it right. I wonder what was your reaction when you first saw the illustrations? Were they like what you had imagined for the book, or?
Well, I don't think I've ever imagined illustrations in my head that match the sketches and the final art, but I was definitely, I thought they were just beautiful. I mean, even the sketches were beautiful. I guess Victor's sketches were so refined that I thought the final art was going to closely resemble it in terms of, style and finish. The initial sketches were like these blue toned, more thick lined drawings that were rough and simpler, but I still loved them. And I was a little attached to them. So when I started seeing the final art, I started missing the sketches, but of course the final art is also gorgeous. So I think Victor just did an amazing job of realizing the story, just like building this complete and beautiful world out of so few words.
That was amazing. And the case covers, was that like a joint decision, or was that all Victo, or was that a designer choice? How did that come about?
Well, in the original version of the story, there was an illustration note about how the protagonist morphs into another child, and you see many different children from different parts of the world throughout history, who representing different groups who have migrated as refugees. And so that idea was in the story, but when we decided to cut it from the story, then Victor and some of the editorial team decided to put it on the outer case. So that, I guess, was like partly a joint decision.
Yeah, it's stunning. It's really something I hope everyone is peeking up under their dust jackets so they don't miss it. That's part of that whole book experience. I think I read somewhere that you said you don't remember reading a lot of picture books as a child, and I wonder what inspired you to want to write for children.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my first recollection of reading picture books was as a teenager, going to my public library, and I don't know what prompted me to go to the picture book section, because it was like in a different section, but I did. I guess because I was still reading other books that were in that same room, and I just didn't go. And there were just some books that really captivated me, not the ones that you normally hear about. There was a book in particular, and it's called Rain Makes Applesauce. and it's a little zany. Yes. So that was the one book that I kind of always kept in my mind. And I have since bought a used copy of it. And I guess that was for me one of the standout books. And I guess I mean, now that I read it, I don't quite have the same feeling, but it definitely had a special place in my heart at the time. And I think just because it allows it, I think the picture books can mix genres a lot. So I'm able to incorporate elements of poetry and storytelling in the writing. And then there's the added element of beautiful visuals. Even though I am not an illustrator, I have always had a fondness for art, and I have, engaged in visual art making in the past, just not since I've had children, just because of lack of time. So I think just it's just a beautiful way to tell a story. And I know that when I first started writing picture book stories, I didn't feel like the genre just wasn't as expansive as it is now. And there were so many stories that I thought needed to be told or could be told, and they weren't being told for children. And I think, like, that's when the mind is so open, and it can grow, and it can change, and I don't know, it's so open to influence, and it's also so full of joy. So just a combination of factors, I think, made me want to write picture books. Yeah.
That's great. And I know that you had said, this book is not just for children, it's, it's for everyone. And I think it's such an important story too for families, for children to be reading with their parents, and, being able to have those discussions about migrant experiences, refugee experiences, and having compassion. And I wonder if you mentioned a little bit in your author note, but any advice you would give to families who are interested in learning more or doing more?
You mean learning more about this topic?
Yes.
Any advice? I think, I don't know any advice. I guess I would read the book and like talk about it. And I guess if you want to know more, there's plenty of things in the news. And if possible, I think just get to know as many different types of people as you can. I know that sometimes people forget about that it's a large world. And I even had to remind one of my family members at one point that her parents were refugees. And at another point, like, one of my neighbors had to use me as an example of a model refugee to her mother-in-law, which you would think that you wouldn't have to bring up an example, but just, I don't know, I think just meet more people and read more stories. I think there are other stories out there. And I guess if you do want, like, one of my favorite books is Inside Out and Back Again. So I guess if you do want to find another book that can deepen your understanding, and I would recommend that book. There are other books. Oh, actually, so many good books have come out recently. So there's like, is it When Stars Are Scattered?
Yes.
I was just wondering if it's when or where. When. Also, Everything Sad is Untrue. Sorry, some of these titles.
Yeah. I read, you got them all. Yeah.
I read both of them, and they're both excellent. So there are many books out there to read. And I guess I would let the child, or whoever is asking the question, ask the questions and lead the way. I don't have any concrete advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we probably can take some questions too from our Q&A. And if you have questions that you'd like to ask, put them in the Q&A. But one of the questions was, do you have a favorite spread, line, or detail from the book? And any, other than the seagull, are there any other Easter eggs that we should look for when reading that you know of?
Let's see. In terms of the Easter eggs, I'm not aware of any other ones, but I also, when I was reading it, I noticed the seagull motif. And my favorite spread or line, well, I think in terms of the art, my favorite scenes tend to be the wide dramatic ones, like the sea and the sun. And the one scene that does include humans that I really like is the one of the altar and the incense. And in terms of text, I think the clock wished it was slower, and the dream wished it was longer, and the heart wished it was stronger. Yeah. Those.
Yeah, I see someone put in the chat that the heart wished it was stronger was their favorite line too. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And I wonder, and it might not be an Easter egg, but the wisp of the incense, I feel like that kind of wispy line just keeps repeating throughout the book, in like all the waves and the the clouds and the lines. It was just it's really beautiful, wishing, wispy motif that throughout the book. I actually didn't pick up quite so much on the seagulls, but that one's the one I remember kind of followed me through the book, and that twisty tree as well, just those shapes. How did the metaphor of kids morphing into each other come to you?
Well, I didn't want to just write about just my personal story. I wanted to connect it to the larger world and to what's the past historical events. And the part of the excerpt that I didn't, the part of the author's note that I didn't read, began with how this story is repeated again and again. And for example, the UN estimates that currently more than 80 million people have been displaced, and about 30 to 34 million of those are children under the age of 18. So this isn't, while this is a personal story, it's not an especially rare or unique one. It actually happens a lot. And so that was very important to me to convey that, because I think sometimes events happen and then they become part of the political discourse, and they become part of like they're on our general radar, and then we sort of forget about it, and then we wait for sort of like the next big event to happen to bring this topic back into mind. And while that's fine when we're not part of when these when we're not experiencing these crises, then it's sort of fine. But when you're actually in a crisis and you're actually a refugee, it doesn't matter if people are thinking about you or not. You're still experiencing the trauma or the suffering or the struggle. And I'm just hoping that readers and viewers will remember that this isn't something that just happens every 5 years, every time there's like a catastrophic event or or some sort of viral image. It is constantly ongoing, and I hope that we can support government leaders and agencies and others who are advocating for a more humanitarian approach to both immigration and to allowing more refugees into the country. And I know that it's not easy, it's not easy to decide who to help and when to help. And we don't have the resources currently to just help everyone, but we can definitely help more. And I hope that, if we work on this problem I don't want to call it a problem, but we work on this issue that that maybe we'll develop better and more inclusive policies that can help a greater number of people, even if we can't help everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. There were a few comments asking what if you shared this with your family and what their response to the book has been.
I just mailed them the printed copies. So this will be their first time seeing the actual book. So I don't think they've received them yet, unfortunately. But I know some of them are very excited to get it. So I think it will generally be positive.
And Celia asks, you mentioned going on a few school visits recently, and how have the students received it?
Well, they say they liked it. I don't know. They asked, actually, the students were asking some very good questions, I thought. And we didn't have enough time for a lot of back and forth just because they've been remote visits.
Mm.
But I know some of them have read it, and some of them connect it to the fact that the family in the story makes a journey, and some of them connected that to their own families. So it was really nice to see how after reading the story, the students could bring it into their own lives and find the connections. And that's what I'm hoping, that, you know, readers will find the connections, and a subject that may seem remote won't be so remote anymore.
I love that. Thank you. And someone else asked, what was your process of collaboration? Did you do it long distance? So I think maybe that was between you and the illustrator.
Yeah, it was it followed the traditional method of collaboration with picture books, which means that everything goes through the editor. So Victor did get a manuscript with illustration notes, just like the minimum number of illustration notes, you know, so that she could understand what was happening in the story beyond the very, you know, enigmatic text, as someone put it. And I also supplied Victor with some research notes and a few references. We don't have many pictures. We don't have any pictures of, you know, my time in Vietnam. And we had only like a few family photos in Hong Kong when we were in Hong Kong. And so a lot of the references I had to supply her with were just things that were on the internet and just some other textual references. I interviewed a few of my family members, my mom and my uncle and a cousin of mine and my brother. And I also interviewed a recent refugee from Syria, because I wanted to see, has it, you know, how is it now, you know, how would someone new to America and someone who just had this experience, has it changed much? Mm-hmm. And it in many ways it hasn't changed. You know, I think there's definitely a commonality to the experiences of a lot of refugees. And then we had some more, we had a little bit of back and forth, but not much. Yeah.
And another question is, was it on purpose that all the pages were spreads instead of adding vignettes and one-page illustrations?
Was it on purpose?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that decision was ultimately up to Victor, but I would say yes, but I am guessing here. I'm guessing that maybe it was able to convey more emotion and drama with spreads, but yeah, I cannot fully answer that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think, do we have time for maybe one more question. What advice could you give for aspiring writers?
Oh, what advice? Well, I think writing is fun, but I think sometimes the best stories are the ones that mean the most to you. And I think each of us has a lot of stories that we can tell. And then there are some stories that only we can tell. And those stories, I think, are especially important. And sometimes they're hard to tell as well. So I say write the story that only you can write, and just do it, practice, but write for fun and find the joy in it, and share it with others. Because the more stories we tell, then the more stories all of us can hear, and then the more we hear, the more we all learn and grow. So I think just go out and do it.
That was wonderful. Well, I want to encourage everyone to get your copy of Wishes. You can purchase it from the Carl Bookshop. I think Courtney just put the link in the chat. And it also, we have signed book plates, both the author and illustrator signed. So we're super excited to be able to offer that with the purchase of a book. And then the first 15, as Courtney said, have prints, and I'm going to hold it up. It's not going to do it justice at all, but I want you all to see this gorgeous print that you get for the first 15 books, and it's both signed and it's stunning. So I just want to make sure everyone knows about this very exciting opportunity. We only have a very small number of them, so get your pre-orders in quick. Someone says, oh my gosh, I want. And it is signed, yeah. And is there any other questions that I want to make sure the chat had before we wrap up? All right, well, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And Victor was here in spirit, and it was so beautiful to see those in progress photos and inspiration behind all that. So we're so excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you everyone for coming. I wish we could see and hear all of you, but chatting's the second best thing.
I know, I wish it could be in person, but yeah, this is a really nice opportunity to be able to do cross-coast chats. All right.
Thank you so much, Moon. This was such a wonderful program. We're so glad you're able to join us. Thank you, Eliza. Thank you, everyone, for connecting this evening, and happy reading. We hope to see you at a future program.